Today, we're going to be reading If You Lived with the Sioux Indian. I want you to look at the pictures and listen to the text. Write one thing that you notice and one thing that you wonder about. We will share after we have read the text for today. If You Live with the Sioux Indian by Mcgovernv2, illustrated by Jean Drew. Now we will look at the table of contents. The table of contents tells you the heading and the page number for different topics. For instance, if I wanted to know where the Sioux slept, I would look for where would you sleep? That is the heading, and the page number is page 19. If I wanted to look for the topic of what do the Sioux kids do when they go to school, I would look for the word school and children, and I would find it under the heading, Did Sioux Children Go to School?, which is found on page 26. Now it's your turn. Let's look for what did the Sioux Indians do for fun? Where would I find it? Search the table of contents to look for what did the Sioux Indian do for fun? I will give you a moment to look for it. Yes, you're correct. I found it. It says, was there a time for fun? And it's found on page 39. Now let's look at another page of the table of contents. Suppose I wanted to know what weapons the Sioux use. Where would I find that? Heading and page number. I'm going to give you a few seconds to look and see if you can find out what kind of weapons the Sioux Indians use. You got it. It's the first one on this page. It says, what weapons did the Sioux use? And in this page number is page 63. The introduction. Indians were the first people to live in what is now the United States. By 1776, when the United States became a nation, there were about 250 different tribes living in different parts of the country. There was no such thing as one Indian way of life. Each tribe lived in its own way. Different tribes lived in different kinds of houses, wore different clothes, ate different food, played different games, and spoke different languages. Most of this book tells about the way the Sioux tribe lived for 50 years, from about 1800, 24 years after the United States became a nation, until 1850. When the white settlers came west by the thousands. Those 50 years were exciting times, when the Sioux rode horses to hunt the buffalo that roamed the western plain. The end of the book tells about the way the Sioux Indian lives today. Look at the timeline on this page. The part that is in color shows the years this book is mostly about. So if you look at 1800, you will see it is colored in blue. This is the period of time in which this book is talking about. Look at the map on the United States. The part in the color is the Great Plains. So if you look at the area that is shaded in green, this is the part of the Great Plains. This is where the Sioux Indian live. At that time, there were 21 tribes on the Great Plains alone. All these Indians were the Plain Indians. The Sioux tribe was one of the most famous of all the Plain Indians. They lived in what is now North Dakota and South Dakota. Dakota was another name for the Sioux tribe. There are still Sioux Indians in the United States. More than 92,000 Sioux are living today in North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. The way they live today is very different from the ways that their great-great-great-great-grandparents used to live. What was it like to be a Sioux Indian long ago? What was it like living in teepees? Did boys and girls have time to play? What clothes did they wear? This book will tell you. What did the Sioux Indian look like? The Sioux Indian did not have red skin. No Indian did. The color of their skin went from very light to deep brown. Most Sioux Indians were tall and thin. Boys and girls, men and women, wore their hair long. Their thick, dark hair came down to their shoulders. Sometimes they wore their hair loose and sometimes they wore it in braids. They parted their hair down the middle. Women often painted the part red. To keep their hair neat, they used hairbrush made with the quills of porcupines. Keeping neat and clean was very important. They bathed as often as they could. If you lived with the Sioux, what kind of house would you live in? You would live in a tent called a teepee. Your teepee will be made of tall wooden poles covered with tough buffalo hides. The buffalo hides were so tough they lasted through winter storms and summer heat. A small family teepee had only one room, but if you had many brothers and sisters, your mother would make a bigger teepee. At night, you could look up and see the stars through the two flaps at the top of the teepee. When it rained or snowed, the flaps were closed. In a Sioux teepee, you would be warm in the winter and cool in the summer. When the Sioux moved from place to place, they took their teepees along. A teepee could be taken apart in minutes and quickly set up again. Women were in charge of the teepees. When it was time to move, women took their teepees apart, and when the tribe set up camp again, women put the teepees up. Women working together could put up a teepee in a few minutes. Would you live in the same place all the time? No. You would live in different places. The Sioux Indians had to keep on the move to hunt the buffalo that roamed the plain. When the Sioux Indians traveled, they took everything they had with them. You wouldn't travel much in the winter months. It was freezing cold. How would you travel? The entire village traveled together. First, the women took down all the teepees. Then everything was piled together. Teepee poles, teepee covers, robes, clothing, tools, and dried food. Everything was put onto a travois. Two long poles with short poles across it. To hold the load, horses pulled the travails. The chief rode in front with the hunters, and the women and children rode behind, carrying the household goods. Babies rode in cradles. 1-year-old boys would be held on the horses in front of their father so that they would get used of the feel of riding. Older boys raced their horses shouting and showing off. If the boys got too noisy, a member of the Tokala would ask them to stop. The Tokala was a group of Indian men chosen to keep order on the trip. Would you stay close to your teepee? You wouldn't have to. You would be free to wander anywhere in the village. You might visit the teepee of your second mother and father. When a Sioux baby was born, his parents chose another set of parents to help care for him. The second mother and father might be the baby's grandparents, or they might be a friend of the family. The second father will be chosen because he has some special skill to teach the boy. He might be an excellent hunter, or a warrior, or a medicine man. The second mother was expected to be gentle and to be loving and to help teach the girl. You would spend as much time with your second parents as you would with your own mother and father. The Sioux Indian believed in sharing everything they had. So if you were wandering about and you got tired, some would just give you a place to sleep. If you were hungry, someone would feed you. And if you were sad, someone would listen to you and comfort you. In your teepee too, there would always be extra food in the cooking pot. There would be an extra soft buffalo robe for a sleepyhead. And there would be a kind word for anyone passing by. Where would you sleep? You would sleep on a soft, thick buffalo robe on the floor of your teepee. The floor was lined with buffalo hide. Everyone in the family slept on the left side of the door. The space to the right of the door was kept for company. Babies slept in their cradles. During the day, the babies' cradles were hung on a tree branch or leaned against a tree or a teepee. What would you eat? Buffalo, 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 and more buffalo. Buffalo boil, dry buffalo, and sometimes raw buffalo. After a buffalo hunt, everyone had plenty of fresh buffalo meat to eat. In the winter, when it was hard to hunt, they ate dried buffalo meat called paninikan. After each big hunt, the women would take some of the buffalo meat. They cut the meat into thin strips and hung the strips on a rack to dry in the sun. Then they pounded the dry meat until it was like powder. Then they add wild cherries, pits too, and mixed them with melted buffalo fat. The permitting was stuffed into flat rawhide bags and stored for winter. You would eat other meat beside buffalo. You would eat bear, deer, antelope, and sometimes wild turkey and hens. Sometimes you would eat fruit and vegetables. The Sioux did not plant gardens because they were always on the move and could not take care of them. They picked wild fruit, cherries, berries, and plums, and they dug up wild vegetables, potatoes, spinach, and prairie turnips. If someone in the Sioux tribe had enough food, no one in the Sioux tribe went hungry, for food was shared or traded by them all. What is the gist so far in this story? What information has the author shared with you? Take a moment to think about it. Yes, the gist of this story is that Sioux Indians were a peaceful people who lived together. They worked, ate, and lived together. Now you will answer some questions about what we just read.